So you're a government employee and you're getting closer and closer to the time when you have to decide whether to retire or resign. Now here's an interesting question that Patrick had emailed me earlier this week, and I wonder if this is something that you have considered. If you have to retire, you can access a lump sum which is called your gratuity. Now could you take more than the prescribed amount? Or if you had to resign, you could access what I call your true 1/3. Now could you take more than your true 1/3 lump sum? See, having access to extra cash would be a great bonus, right? Now you have the freedom to spend this money as you please, which means you are in control. However, the big question is this possible? Now in this video, we'll explore exactly that. I'm Dhevan Naicker, the go-to guy for South African government employees wanting clarity on whether to retire or resign. Now if you've not already done so, please click on the subscribe button to gain access to our videos as soon as we produce them. And that way you don't miss out. Let's get started with today's video. Can you take more as a lump sum? Now I want to quickly walk through the option of retiring and exactly what happens on a retirement structure. So if you're aiming at retiring, you can gain access to a gratuity lump sum. Now there's certain key information, you might have watched this in previous videos of mine, that I want you to pay attention to, especially when it comes to the gratuity lump sum. The first thing is the amount is predetermined. That means it is provided for you, right? You don't really have much of a say when it comes, or actually you don't have a say when it comes to that. It's predetermined, which means they would, the pension fund would identify the exact amount. It's all based on formulas, remember? So they would identify the amount that you would collect as a lump sum gratuity. So keep in mind it's predetermined. And because it's a predetermined amount, there's no flexibility for you to adjust it. Meaning you cannot take higher than that, you cannot take lower than that. The amount is fixed, you have to take that amount. Now, a second important thing that I want to share with you, and you might have observed this, especially if you've been watching previous videos, is the amount that's predetermined is also future calculated. So let me just quickly explain what I mean by a future calculation. Assume you are not yet, so let's put this at 60. So assume you are not yet 60, your pension statement has a retirement benefit or a gratuity lump sum that is calculated to age 60. So let's use an example. Say you are 55 years old and you're having a look at your pension statement. It shows a lump sum gratuity. The figure, let's use an example of R1,000,000 that it's showing as your lump sum gratuity. Keep in mind, when you have a look at the fine print, that figure is not an accurate figure at 55. It's actually projected to age 60, right? You have a look at the notes, it will show you that on your pension fund statement, which means if you are leaving before 60, the amount that you see, even though it's a predetermined amount, is still not an accurate amount. So if you are leaving before 60, it means you need to reach out to the pension fund, identify exactly how much you would receive as a lump sum if you were leaving at that specific point in time. Now what happens if you are beyond 60? Now if you are an SAPS member, or again depending on your sector, right? For SAPS members you cannot work beyond 60, meaning 60 is the cutoff date, right? If you are in Department of Health, for example, or Department of Education, you can work to 65. So what happens to your gratuity lump sum if you happen to get to 63 as an example? So let's go back in here, say you are 63. Keep in mind that once you pass 60, your gratuity lump sum, according to the formula, is now adjusted to age 65. Meaning it's no longer worked with at age 60, it's still forward projected to 65. And you would notice this, so the day that you, say the month that you turn 60, you end up getting a pension fund, you end up getting a statement, and you compare it to a month before you turn 60, you would see a big difference, because the month before you turn 60, it's calculated to age 60, your gratuity lump sum. Whereas the month after you turn 60, it's calculated to age 65. It's forward projected, and obviously that means it's going to throw out a high value. Now you want to be mindful of this, because at the time that you're making your exit, you don't want to be caught out where, and a lot of members have experienced this, you are expecting a high value, but in reality you're receiving something that's much lower. So keep in mind, on the retirement side, your lump sum is predetermined. There's no flexibility. You're unable to take more than that prescribed value. Let's go take a look at what happens on the resignation side. Now again, there are many factors to consider when deciding whether to retire or resign. We're not going into all of that detail in this particular video. We're just having a look at, are you able to access a higher lump sum? So let's assume that this is where your funds are right now. So it's sitting with the pension fund. If you are aiming at resigning, there are two options that are available. The first is you can access your money in cash. Now, if you are accessing your money in cash, you have to be mindful of tax. You agree? Because whenever money is coming into your bank account, this is when SARS would apply a tax directive and they're going to tax you. And the tax system works on a sliding scale. So the higher your lump sum, the higher the tax that you would pay. So keep in mind, there would be tax and would be significant again depending on the value that you have. The alternative, if you've watched the Retire vs. Resign Masterclass or you've watched other videos of mine, you would know that you can transfer your money into an approved fund. Now, once you have your money transferred into an approved fund, again, because provided everything is done correctly, you would be in a position where there's zero tax, and simply because there's no money coming into your bank account, right? Remember the first option, if you are taking this money out in cash, you're going to pay some tax. In the second option, if you transfer into the approved fund, there's no money coming into your bank account. And because there's nothing coming into your bank account, they cannot be taxed, right? Now, obviously, it needs to be structured correctly. What happens as a next step? So what happens thereafter, once it's in the investment house bank account, you then can access a value from there. And this is where you can access what I call your true 1/3. True 1/3 value, because it's the formula for doing this is extremely simple. Whatever amount is sitting in your approved fund, it's simply divided by 3. Let's use an example so we make this look a bit easy, right? And it's okay, you don't have to do any of the math or any of the calculations. Let's assume that you have 3 million that's sitting inside of your approved fund. We're simply dividing by 3. So 3 million divided by 3, it means your true 1/3 lump sum would sit at R1,000,000. Now, usually, again, if you get the formulas done correctly, especially if you factor what I shared with you earlier about the gratuity being a forward projected value, usually you would find that your true 1/3 lump sum is already a higher lump sum than the gratuity, right? Which means it is possible for you as a government employee to access a higher lump sum, higher than your gratuity, if you're transferring this to the approved fund, following the process as I've shared in the masterclass. You do it all correctly and then you can access a higher lump sum. But let's take it a bit deeper, right? Keep in mind that although you can access a higher lump sum than the gratuity, or it's possible for you to do that, you cannot access more than a 1/3 lump sum. Meaning, as we've done now in the calculation, 3 million is what the total value in our example is. The maximum that you could take out is R1,000,000. Meaning you cannot ask for 1.1 million, you cannot ask for 2 million, you agree? It's just limited to a maximum of 1 million. Now, here's another important concept that I want to share with you. It's not necessary that you take the exact 1/3 value. Resignation offers you a lot more flexibility, especially if you're going about this the way that I've shared with you in previous videos, as well as in the Retire vs. Resign Masterclass. You can access up to 1/3 lump sum. So let's look at our example, the one we've done together. We said 3 million is what's inside the approved fund. You could access 1/3, which is a R1,000,000 lump sum. And it's not necessary that you take the full 1 million, meaning you could access up to 1 million. That means you could take 500,000 if you wanted to, 700,000, 900,000. You could even take 10 Rand if you wanted to, right? You could adjust this on a sliding scale from 1 cent all the way up to whatever your 1/3 value is, right? Now, keep in mind that once you make a decision, right? Once you make a decision, you cannot access another lump sum thereafter. Let's use an example so that I make this part to be clear, right? Let's just assume that you could access the entire 1 million, and for tax purposes, or maybe you don't really want to have anything extra, or maybe you want to move more money into your 2/3 component, whatever the reasoning is, you elect to take an amount of 250,000 in cash. So you're taking 250,000 in cash, which means 750,000 you're not taking out, right? Now, naturally, that would affect your taxes because you could have taken $1 million, you're taking less. Naturally, you're going to pay less tax. However, please keep in mind that once you access the 250, you cannot at a future point in time come back to say, hey, listen, I could have accessed R1 million. I only took 250. I now want my 750, right? That's not going to be possible. What happens here is the balance of this money would be shifted into your 2/3 component. So let's look at it together. Here's the 2/3. And in our example, remember 1/3 is 1 million, 2/3 is 2 million. So let's quickly go and add the two up so you know exactly how I came to those figures. Here's your 1/3 at 1 million, your 2/3 is 2 million. If you add those two figures up, it comes to this figure here of 3 million. So keep in mind, assuming that you decide, hey, you're not going to take the full 1 million, you're going to take 250,000, the remaining portion would actually go here. So now you're investing more than 2/3. You can obviously adjust your income so you can take a higher income. However, at no point in time in the future can you go back to say, hey, listen, I put in my 750, I now want to access the 750. That's not allowed, right? There are options for you to adjust your income here, but you cannot take an income as well as a lump sum dip. It's not possible to do that, which means you want to be extremely cautious when you're making that decision in the beginning. So I hope the video has been helpful. Quick summary, it is possible for you as a government employee to access a higher lump sum, higher than the gratuity as we've seen here. You can access your true 1/3 lump sum. You can even access less if you wanted to, right? That's the beauty. You can adjust this to your situation. I hope the video has been helpful to you. If it has, give me a thumbs up so I know I'm providing content that's meaningful and helpful to you. And remember to share these videos with other members so that they too can be empowered with this knowledge. I'll see you in the next video.